Oh, you thought you were going to get away from the holiday music here on the Astro Weather. Well, you were wrong. You were wrong. Thank you for being here. Sorry I'm a little bit late today. We had the agents of Discordia show up yesterday and completely rearrange my entire studio. Well meaning, of course, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So, yes, we have a little bit of a holiday intro for the holidays. Who knows? Maybe I'll come up with another one. Maybe I'll come up with a Hanukkah intro. But it found an old classic, it's Switched on Santa. And it's basically all the Christmas holiday jingle songs with an analog computer, or an analog synthesizer, rather. So what's going on with everybody? Good morning to each and every one of you. Good to be here. I hope that you're having a wonderful start to your day. And if not your day, then I hope your evening is being mellow, peaceful, reflective, all the things that your evening should be. Not stressed out. You're decompressing. You're moving into the sleep cycle. Leave your worries behind. Hopefully my weather report won't stir you up too much. Yes, please hit the like button. That's always important. I like your shirt, Robert. Very 3.5 Men. You know what this is called, Susie? This is called the middle-aged guy shirt. And it's paired up with slip-on loafers. This is how it works. Hope move goes well and that cats travel, settle into new home. Me too. I was at the new casa yesterday, and it's very interesting how Kerrville is quite different than Fredericksburg. It's just quite different. The people of Kerrville are, dare I say, nicer. The demographics of Fredericksburg are fascinating. I think this is not a swipe at anybody, but it's mostly Germans, and they did a hell of a job carving out a reality here. When you get into the story of Fredericksburg and this area and the German wave of migration from Germany, it's all happening like 1849, right? Like Marxism is on fire in Germany. You know, it's so that I'm diverging a little bit here, but that history of Germany is so fascinating because Marx is so destabilizing. You know, he wasn't just some, guy who, creating this polemic and then it'd be discovered years later by, weekend revolutionaries. No, Marx had a serious impact on Germany and the German economy, which is one of the reasons why there is the Second Reich. It's a Reformation period because of all the damage that Marxism had created in Germany. And so part of the migration pattern for Germany was here. If you look around and look at all the quote unquote colonization that took place, the Germans don't really do a lot of colonization. I mean, they're there, but they don't necessarily claim the land as their own, right? They integrate, and it's not like the Portuguese or the French or the Italians or the English or even the Dutch. It's like, here's the flag and we're here. And I really like that. So they migrated here to this area in Texas under very brutal conditions because they had the Comanche Indians who were like these incredible horsemen, and they had to deal with them, and they also had to deal with fucking heat and this very in alien terrain, unlike anything in Germany. And some of them were Marxists, and some of them were just people who were looking for a better opportunity. And then as soon as they get here, they kind of get swept up into the Civil War, right? It's like, oh, which side are you on? You better be on the side of and they didn't want to fight. The Germans didn't want to fight. Like we got no dog in this fight. And a lot of German men were actually leaving the area so that they would not get plucked by the Confederate army and then conscripted and put into war. I mean, so the story here is fascinating. And the Marxists had their own little towns and they didn't fare very well. Like, imagine that. They didn't fare very well because everybody that was an Indian wanted to be a chief, essentially. And the other group who really carved out a niche in this area did amazing. In fact, right now, the house I'm living in is one of the families that settled here a long time ago, 1849. It's one of the original families of the Hill Country. I was the first person to live in this house other than somebody from this family. And it's a fairly famous family in terms of this area, huge amounts of brothers, right? And this is how the game worked back then. And they did an amazing job here of working with the land and even the people. Like Fredericksburg had a treaty with the Comanche, and they came to terms with the Comanche and said, we're not going to fight you. You know, you can have this area. It'll always be your area. And there was literally a big plot of land that was set aside for the Comanche. And it's like, this is yours. And the Comanche have come back every year, mostly, to do their rituals, their services. So it's one of the few places in the United States where there was a standing treaty that was created by the founder of Fredericksburg, this guy named Musibach, and the Comanche, and they honored it until recently, which is weird. Like the Freemasons took over their land. Imagine that. This has been since I've been here. But you have this overlay of German culture in Fredericksburg, and they're not bad people. Like they've been really, good to me, kind to me with this house and everything. So there's that, and some of them are. It's very interesting dealing with generational families and towns that kind of run things, and they still kind of run things here, right? It's just not as obvious in a lot of ways. So there's that, and then you have a bunch of people that move to this area. We'll get to the weather, I promise. You have a bunch of people that move to this area who have money, right? They come from Dallas, they come from Houston, they come from Austin, some come from California. I was not one of them. When I moved here, I moved from Austin into an apartment, so I didn't really have a lot of capital. And they bring another kind of layer of attitude in some ways, right? It's sort of like the Southwestern nouveau riche. And they're okay, I guess. I never found any traction in Fredericksburg. I ran for city council there, and I met some really nice people and very helpful people. But it was like once that was done, it was such a weird time because I was running for city council, and they were selling my house that I was renting in. So I had to go find a new place to live, right? And it was during the height of everybody moving and all these places in Fredericksburg getting flipped into Airbnbs, which is another reason why it's really hard to get traction in this town, because a lot of the people that are here aren't even from here, right? They're not even from here. They come here for the weekend. So it's been a nice place for the years that I've been here. I came here in 2018 and, moving south now. So 5 years, I've been in this area for 5 years. And it's amazing just how much it's grown as well. We have what's called it's the Tuscany of Texas, and there are all these wineries here. And now they're just developing the shit out of everything, right? So across the highway, there's going to be a big mini mart. It's like, I'm kind of glad I'm moving, because I don't want to have to deal with looking at the mini mart all the time. And I know it'll be a nice interstate mini mart. And then down the road, they're putting a huge complex. There's a place called the Salt Lick in Austin. They're building a big salt lick out here. So the time has come and the move is on. And Kerrville is a very different demographic. There's kind of the German overlay, but not as much as in Fredericksburg. And again, there's no slight to the Germans here. A lot of them have been really kind people to me. In fact, all of them have been. But it's more working class. Like, people live in Kerrville and they work in Kerrville. Like, what a fucking concept, right? That's not the case here. People can't afford to live here. So people live in Kerrville and commute to this place. So they live in Comfort and they commute to this place. Quick little side note about Comfort. Karl Marx's sister moved to Comfort, which is just south of here by about maybe 35 miles, maybe a little bit less. And the rumor has it Karl Marx actually visited his sister in Comfort, Texas. So that would be kind of an interesting kind of Friday forecast to delve into. All right, thank you for allowing me to kind of uncork my story there about this area and just how much it's changing. It's crazy how much it's changing. Okay, let's get into some astro weather today. Are we feeling the Sag vibes? Are people upbeat and cheerful? Because that's usually what happens, theoretically, right? Okay, I'm feeling cheerful. Okay, here we go. Here we go. No wonder I'm cheerful. The moon is at 29 Virgo, and it's right on my sun. I like the energy today. I like the energy. And tonight, if you're in another part of the world where it is the evening, just wait a couple hours. So for all you folks in Europe, well, here as well, as we move into the day, this moon is going to transition into Libra. Critical degree of Virgo, 29th degree, anaretic degree of the moon right now, and finishing up emotional Virgo work. Like, it's so funny, right? So my mother has hired, my mother's got Eris, I think, conjunct Saturn in her chart. Okay, I've been living with this. Been very interesting, life study of astrology. And so I've come to realize that when somebody has an aspect like that, it's not just them, right? It's who they bring into their life. So she found this woman to clean the house. And I call them the swarm. And they come in and they just go through this place. And they're agents of discordia. I came in yesterday and my studio was all fucked up. Things were unplugged. Things were shoved onto my couch. Come on, 2-4 hermit. You don't do that. You just don't do that. And then all my vitamins and supplements were boxed up. It's like, right. That's my 29-degree Virgo moon story. It's sort of like, the supplement thing. It's like, just leave them alone. So you don't have to touch them. Anyway, it will be much nicer. Not that I'm not nice. I think I'm being fairly kind. But when the moon moves into Libra, it smooths all things over, right? And it'll still be in this trine. Well, briefly, the brief trine with Uranus, brief Uranus trine. A little bit more with Pluto. So if you don't like the astro weather, figuratively, just wait around a couple hours today because it will change. If you're feeling grumpy, or you're feeling nervous, or you're feeling agitated, or you're feeling critical, self-critical, critical of others, just give it a few hours. That moon moves into Libra, smooths everything over. Fair, balanced, still got that little triangle action going on for, part of the day and part of the night. It's like the weather. Just wait. It'll change. Trust me on this. Your mood will change. It'll be, a little bit more balanced, fair, not, slightly anal and neurotic about your fucking supplements, like yours truly. And then we have Mercury over here. So we do have this Mercury moon square. You'll have to deal with that. And Mercury in Capricorn is stoic. It's a stoic Mercury. I'll hold on to that. I don't have to share what I really feel like sharing. In fact, you're going to have to chisel it out of me if you want to get it. But that's Mercury and Capricorn. It's just the facts. It's minimal. It's minimalism at its finest, right? It's writing something that's 1,000 words and sculpting it down to about 600. Right? That's Mercury in Capricorn. And the moon in Libra is like, well, come on, everybody gets a seat at the table. Everything's fair. And Mercury Capricorn is like, no, it's not. No, not everything is fair. And then here's the lesson you need to learn from it. So what that means is that we're balancing what our emotional needs are with this kind of ultra pragmatism that would be associated with Mercury and Capricorn. Bottom line, just the facts. So this is a big kind of a big transit, actually. Now, you can engineer win-win. Isn't that what Libra's about? Win-win. Like you get a little, I get a little. We get a win-win here, right? But you can engineer a win-win, and it comes right in here with Mercury moving into trine with Jupiter. So how does that flesh out? Literally flesh out, because we're talking to Earth signs. It feels like the Moon Libra square is dealing with limitation, and with Mercury trine Jupiter, it's like, well, wait a minute here. Instead of kind of demanding that this thing gets sorted out now and it gets divided up now, why don't we wait a little bit and let's set our sights bigger, right? Let's set our sights bigger. This is one, this brings up this concept of emotional IQ. And you guys know the story. Daniel Goleman, Stanford, runs the experiment, 1 donut or 2 donuts, leaves a kid in the room with 1 donut and says, you can eat this now. We've talked about this before. You can eat this now, or you can wait till I come back. I'm not going to tell you when I'm going to come back. But when I come back, you'll get 2 donuts. And so what he did is he tracked those kids over time. And he found that the kids that waited, delayed their gratification, and had 2 donuts were generally more successful in life. And this is where we get the term emotional IQ. Comes out of the Daniel Goleman experiments, right? By the way, I would have been a 1 donut kid. Anyway, this is a 2 donut day. It's a 2 donut day, but you have to wait a little bit and kind of expand your expectations. Not really expand your expectations. You have to expand your ability to wait, and through that waiting, have a sense of expectancy that you will get what you need, right? This is how we work this right here. So the demand is everything's got to be fair. Come on, it's got to be fair. It's got to be fair. Divvy it up, equal it up, slice it up. It's like, just wait. Just wait. Let whatever it is that you are discussing, negotiating, let it mature a little bit. There's a process with cheeses and meats, where it's called curing, and things, like when you cure a piece of meat, it ages, and it tastes incredibly good if you do it right. And so this is a kind of a curative phase with Mercury Jupiter trine, and we're in the season of Jupiter, right? So it doesn't matter what sign it's in. It's also, if you can wait a little bit, and you have to talk through things with this Mercury moon square, but if you can wait a little bit, the dividends are wonderful, right? They really pay off. But that's part of this kind of emotional IQ piece. And even right now, today, with the moon in opposition with Neptune, that's also setting expectations. And you'll still get it a little bit in those early degrees of Libra. So we're working on our emotional body today. And I do really like this trine with Pluto and this trine with Uranus. So you can shift and pivot. And maybe this conversation will help you do that. We talked about Venus and Scorpio, the ride or die, right? And it's getting closer to Pallas. As Venus gets closer to Pallas, the insights into relationship and the psychological underpinnings of relationship are going to become much more obvious. And that's a good thing, but it's also sometimes a bad thing, right? Like sometimes people want to live with the illusion that everything is wonderful and everything is great and everything is fine. And a lot of people would rather live with the illusion then kind of understand what's going on beneath the surface. And then once you understand what's going on beneath the surface, then what do you do with it? Once you understand the patterns and the cycles and everything that are associated with this Venus Pallas conjunction, where do you go? How do you make it work? Right? What kind of adjustments do you need? Because the obvious with Venus and Scorpio is that there's a clear demarcation. It's like on off. It's a very binary kind of response to relating. And I also think that there is, well, today at least, we're still in that square with Pluto. But as Venus moves closer to Pallas, it's still going to be in trine with Saturn. So again, we'll break out the Daniel Goleman and emotional IQ, slide rule, right? Like if you can have a long-term view of relationship, if you have a long-term view of your commitments, and see the potential in the pattern, it can pay off. Now, there's a lot going on with Venus also as opposing Jupiter. And the Jupiter opposition is one of those things where it's like I was working with this Gen Z, young Gen Z guy last night. I love Gen Z. They are the best generation. And not just because I have a Gen Z kid, but because I can have an informed discussion with them from the jump, right? Like from the jump. The minute I'm talking with this young man, we're talking about Philip K. Dick, Krishnamurti. It's like, who are these kids, right? And so, yeah, I don't know why I'm bringing this up in some ways, but it was Jupiter. And I was talking to him about, he has Jupiter and Saturn in the first house. Saturn right on the ascendant in Taurus conjunct Algol, very intense conjunction. And then just below that, Jupiter and Gemini. So these two, the two lords of the zodiac, right? Enki and Enlil in the first house. And one of the things I talked about is that the difference between Jupiter and Saturn is that Saturn needs a goal and Jupiter needs a target. So if you run that through your head, when we talk about Jupiter, we talk about Sagittarius, we talk about the archer and the bullseye. You need a target. Like Sagittarius loves a target because there's practice, there's chance, there's something in the act of trying to hit the mark that is much more appealing to Sagittarian and Jupiter, or Sagittarian Jupiterian sensibility. Saturn needs a goal, right? Saturn needs a goal. So here we go. Venus opposing Jupiter. Again, relationship, you need a target. You need a target. And this is about expanding the potential of relationship, making it bigger, right? And this Venus-Pluto square does give it a sense of immediacy. Like we got to do something. We have to do something in order for the relationship to grow. Any relationship, business relationship, partnership, like it's all in the air right now. And it's kind of difficult because whether you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, it's a season where we begin to shut down. Right? It's like, it's the culmination of the year, the Gregorian year at least. So as things are shutting down, just because things are shutting down in some ways, it doesn't mean that the chart stops or the wheel stops turning. So this is a really important time in terms of relation. Just, over the course of the next five days, the closer Venus gets to Pallas, the more insight, the more depth, the more psychological understanding you have in your relationships. And of course, in Scorpio, you have to grow, right? You have to transform something and grow. It's essential. And Jupiter's like, hey, here's the target. It's over here. Let's have a target. Makes sense. We still have Sun Mars going on here, right? In Sagittarius. We're about halfway through Sagittarius. I'm always sad when Sag season leaves. I love Sag season. It's one of my favorite times of year. It's, I'm a 28 Scorpio rising. So when you have the sun transiting your first house, it's like the second birthday, right? You have your solar return and you have the return of the sun in the first house, which kind of celebrates, really, in some ways, more like when you were born. Like you were born, you get your ascendant, and when the sun crosses that ascendant mark, it's sort of like a reenactment of your first breath. So with the sun in the first house, I like it. I feel good. Today, the sun, I believe, is conjunct the U.S. ascendant in its chart, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure it is. And if that's true, then all things United States related will be very important today. Laws, rules, all the things that they're making for us, right? And that brings us into the square, that Mars square with Saturn. I was reading this thing yesterday about how they want to have every new car, is it by 2035 or whatever, one of their Agenda 2030 goals, to have a kill switch in the car. It's for your safety. It's for you, we just have to make sure that you're safe, so that when we turn your car off while you're going down the road at a 60-mile clip, if we let you get to 60 miles per hour, if you've been a good enough citizen, if your social credit score allows you to drive over 45, you might have to shut your car down, do it 60 miles per hour. Just remember that. So we're in this time, right, where they like to slip laws through. They always do this at the end of the year. And I think there's more pushback this year. And keep in mind, we're also going to have a Mercury retrograde coming up right around the solstice, and starts in Capricorn and goes back into Sagittarius. It might even be the repeal of some laws, which would be good if they're the right laws, right? Or the wrong laws that need repealing. But to me, this is very authoritarian. On a personal level, be careful of trying to foist your beliefs onto other people today, right? Because Sagittarius is very zealous, and you could be a recipient of that as well. Like, oh, hey, wait a minute, enough with the dogma. Let's sit down and have a different discussion. It's a famous line from Mad Men that Don Draper brings early into his evolution as a creative and a copywriter. And I think the line goes like this: if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. And that shows up periodically throughout Mad Men. And that's a strategy. If you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. All right. Don't forget to hit the like. I really want to get to 14,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I don't think that's asking too much. I think we can do it. Don't you? I think we can. Where's my star of the day? Oh, there it is. Way down there. Way down there in Argentina. The tip of Argentina. Today was kind of an interesting day. Like, who was I going to pick? And so I decided to pick Randy Rhoads. Today's Randy Rhoads' birthday. And the reason why I picked Randy Rhoads has a lot to do not only with his birth chart, but also his, to be honest here, his death chart. And I've talked about Randy Rhoads before. If you don't know who Randy Rhoads is, he was a shit hot guitarist, and was, with Ozzy Osbourne. And Randy Rhoads is a pretty amazing guitar player. The interesting thing about Randy Rhoads is that he didn't drink and he didn't do drugs. And I always find it really bizarre when people who have a straight lifestyle, straight edge or religious lifestyle, hang out with people that are complete reprobates. And I'm like, ooh, the decision making around that was not good. The thing about Randy Rhoads that I think really sets him apart in a lot of ways is that Mars in Aries. He's got it at 0 degrees. He's a force, right? He's got it in the 9th house, which I think in some ways does play a role in his demise astrologically, because he's got this built-in T-square. He is going to have issues with travel. Mercury, right? He's got Mercury over here, and he has Mercury at the final degrees of Sagittarius. So it's weird because Mars is in a fire sign. Oh, by the way, this is your True Hemp Science Star of the day. Let me get the banner up here. There's the banner. One of my favorite parts of the show. You know, and you can just see in a lot of ways too, like how he's driven. You know, he's got that Mars Saturn trine in his chart. You know, so he's focused, he's driven. You know, he's a force. Randy Rhoads is a force. You know, Mars in the 9th house can be indicative of danger and trouble through traveling, especially touring. And Randy Rhoads is born in Santa Monica, California, and he dies in Florida. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the 9th house, right? So if you, technically speaking, the 3rd house is within 150 miles of where you live. The 9th house can be upwards of 500 miles and more, right? I mean, if you think about it, there are certain parts of the United States where you could cover 3 states in 500 miles, especially on the East Coast. That's big travel, right? That's in Europe. You could cover 3 countries, depending on where you are in Europe, right? So 500 miles or more is the 9th house. So he's got Mars. So he's going to run into Aries, right? Trouble, challenge in that 9th house. And the if you read his or the accounts of his death, they're creepy. And you can just tell that everybody was in this RV. You know, there was a lot of tension in the band. I guess Randy Rhoads had banged Sharon Osbourne. Don't get me started. But and Ozzy, I think, knew about it. Ozzy Osbourne's a Sagittarius as well. So that's not really the backstory. The backstory is that one of the guys, I think he was a management guy in the band, or a roadie, might have been top roadie. He had a helicopter. He had access to a helicopter, and they've been up all night, except for Randy, because he didn't do drugs, according to his bio, and they'd been doing coke and drinking all night. And this guy was giving people rides on this helicopter around their RV. And the first-hand account comes from Don Airy, which is an interesting name, right? Airy, Airy. He was the keyboard player, and he had been on the helicopter prior to Randy Rhoads. And so this guy just keeps going. You know what's really weird about it? It's a lot like the death of Lynn's husband in Magnum PI with the helicopter, and that the helicopter pilot keeps flying lower and lower and lower, you know, trying to, you know, buzz the horizon or buzz the people and wake them up. And that was really what was going on. So Don Airy saw all this, right? And he's the guy with a firsthand account of it. And that's where Randy meets his demise, is in this helicopter. And what's interesting is that the sun is in the final degrees of Pisces. So it's right on his Mars, right? So that's the, you know, it's man, it's just really hard to look at this chart, because that's the end of the zodiac, right? And it's really tipping on his Mars up here. And then we get this Mercury. So he's got this T-square period. He's going to have problems with travel unless they're in Neptune. The worst thing that he could have done is to hook up with Ozzy Osbourne and go on this tour. Worst thing, because he was going to have this anyway. I think he might have even gotten into a car accident prior to the helicopter accident. I'm pretty sure he did. So with Neptune, right, it's sort of like taking foolish risks, foolish chances, getting on board of a helicopter with some guy who was coked out of his brain. And the backstory with the guy flying the helicopter is that there was a woman who was part of the tour management. It wasn't Sharon, it was somebody else, who had been the girlfriend of the guy who was flying the helicopter, and she was leaving him. So the guy in the helicopter was utterly self-destructive, right? Utterly self-destructive. And what's also interesting, a lot of these things have to line up, right? So over here, here's the moon, and it's during this time, and this is the exact time that Randy Rhoads was 10 a.m. in the morning on March 19th, 1982. So the moon is on his south node, right? He's got that south node in Capricorn right over here. So we have the moon there on his south node. We have Neptune, which had been camping out there for a while. Oh, and let's throw some Uranus on his Aries, right? So here's his dedication, clean living, yada yada yada, and Uranus in Sag, disruptive Sag, Ozzy Osbourne, the Sag, right? On the upside, Randy Rhoads is about to become a superstar. Randy Rhoads is about to be launched into the stratosphere of guitar gods. And that's where, Saturn, which is the mainstream, Uranus, which is rock and roll and rebellion and all those things, it's all coming together, right? Oh, look what happens. We have a square going on with transiting Mercury. So we have Uranus conjuncting Saturn, and he's got a Saturn-Mercury square anyway in his chart. So with a Saturn-Mercury square in terms of travel, you have to take precautions. You probably have to drive the speed limit, right? With the Saturn, you have to, practice, anticipatory driving. So he's got Uranus squaring transiting Mercury, and that's clearly right here. And Mercury, what? In the 9th house. So where is he? Again, he's away from where he was born, Santa Monica in Florida. Everything is lining up here, right? The only thing we're missing is a strong Pluto signature. Well, we get a little bit of that, right? We get a little bit because we have Neptune squaring the moon in his chart. Here's Pluto right off of Neptune. And man, right? So we got a Pluto moon square. And then again, when I think of what was going on that tour bus, it was probably just this maelstrom of dark psychic energy, people fucking each other and fucking each other over, and breakups and coke. And you just have, all these, these archons and these entities are just feasting, right? They're just feasting on, the loosh in that RV. And they get into the head of that guy who's the tour guy, right? Or the roadie guy. And he's just like, fuck it. I'm going to scare the shit out of my fucking, I guess it was his girlfriend or his wife, right? His significant other. And Randy Rhoads happens to be on board. Like and it's, you get into Pluto and it's kind of fatal. Like there's a fatalism with Pluto. And he's got a Sun Pluto square in his chart anyway. Right. So he's going to have these moments where he's going to come face to face with intensity and death. Right. So for him, that could be, you can work that out. I don't know, hobbies. But he's going to come face to face with that. To me, the biggest signature here is, and he, poor judgment, just poor judgment with Neptune. And I think one of the things that Randy Rhoads was trying to do is he's trying to get photographs. He got a camera. It was like he wanted all these photographs from the helicopter. You can just, see this thing in action here. And, was it his time? Was it just his number waiting to be punched? He would have had to deal with something like this at some point, whether it was a helicopter or whether it was a car or a bus or a train. Right. But on this day specifically, with the sun at 28 degrees, final degree of the zodiac, conjuncting Mars. Remember, the 12th house takes you out of the chart. And then and we come back into the chart via the ascendant. So these are the final degrees of the zodiac, right on his Mars. And his Mars gets tangled up in this T-square with Neptune playing a key role here in drugs and poor judgment. So he would have had to go through something at some point anyway. But on this day, it was fatal. So there you go. There's your star of the day, the late, great Randy Rhoads. If you, in the body, want to stay healthy, here's what you do. You go to truehempscience.com and you spend $100 or more and type in the words 15MINS and you will get a goodie bag. And that goodie bag will have lots of nice little gifts for you. And here's what you probably could do if you wanted to. Spend $200. Spend $200. You get free shipping. And I bet you, if you were nice to Chris, he might give you a little extra goodie bag. He just might do that. And if you had that, you can use that goodie bag as a stocking stuffer and turn somebody on to some great CBD products. And, oh, what's this? Oh, it's some of the best CBD on the internet. What's CBD? And you can tell them all about CBD and everything that goes along with it. So there you go. I'm still doing the Star of the Day, which you can find on my website. All you Star of the Day people, today is the day I get back to you. I promise you. You have my word. It's a little bit tricky during this move period, but it's going to happen. All right, we're out of here. I'll be over on 15 minutes on Boxcast. Thank you very much. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. How about a little holiday music to get us on out of here?